Thank you for joining us. I'm Marnie Hughes, and this is Missing on NewsNation. Each week, we cover a missing person case from across the country, and oftentimes the cases we focus on are not getting much national media attention. We believe every missing person matters to their family, to their friends, and we think by sharing these stories together, we can help find answers. Before we get to this week's case, I want to highlight several developing cases that we've been following, starting with the desperate search happening right now in Kansas and Oklahoma for two women, 27-year-old Veronica Butler and 39-year-old Jillian Kelly, according to Texas County Sheriff's Department authorities. On March 30th, so this Easter weekend, the women were traveling to pick up their kids, and they never made it. Their car was found abandoned along the highway on a county road south of Elkhart, Kansas. Authorities initially called their disappearance suspicious. Now they are saying foul play is likely. A local school in the area went into lockdown for several days this week because of concern around the search for these moms. If you have any information that can help in their disappearance, you can contact the Oklahoma State Bureau of Investigation. The number is 1-800-522-8017. The search also continues for Sebastian Rogers in Tennessee, a 15-year-old on the autism spectrum who was last seen February 26th. We have learned the United Cajun Navy, a volunteer group that was helping in the search for Sebastian, has backed off of the search due to security concerns and threats.
The threats have been coming both in person, by phone, and also online. So we have multiple places that we're dealing with this, but we have turned over information to the local authorities so they can take action.
Sebastian's mom went to wake him up for school one day to find his bedroom empty. His shoes were left behind, and despite multiple searches using canines around his house, there has been no sign of Sebastian. The search this week also turned up no new evidence. Some eyeglasses were found, according to police, but they did not belong to Sebastian. We also have an update to pass along in the death of Missouri College student Riley Strain. Riley's body was found 2 weeks after he was reported missing. Police found his remains in the Cumberland River near Nashville. Police say his death appears to have been an accident, and they do not suspect foul play. Riley's family, though, has their own autopsy being conducted, and they want to know why Riley was found without his pants on, despite him wearing a belt. He also didn't have on his shoes, and there was no water in his lungs. We talked to a former FBI agent about why that might be.
Well, some drowning victims, as they struggle, they actually have a spasm that occurs in their larynx area, and it closes off the ability for that water to enter their lungs, or very little water to get through in their struggle. This happens in about 10 to 15% of drownings. And so some call it dry drowning, where you actually still suffocate.
Yeah, Riley's case, such a tragic one. Now we want to focus on this week's missing case and the disappearance of a wife and mother from Montana. Her name is Eva Prather, and she seemingly walked away on a cold winter morning in December from her home in Missoula. It was just 2 days before the new year, her husband frantically discovering her disappearance and the fact that Eva was not dressed for the winter. Now her two young children are being sheltered from this storm and the mystery surrounding that morning. As her husband waits for word, wondering what happened to Eva. Here's her case.
355 on this.
We were so young, it seems like.
With the joy of his spirited children in the background, Dave Prather can still muster a smile while looking through his family's scrapbooks.
I don't know, they've been buried away since we moved into town, I think, so yeah.
Despite many a dark day since his wife disappeared.
Given how little we know every single day, I just think Eva's gonna walk through the door.
Prather thinks Eva walked out of the door of the family's Missoula home sometime between 1 and 6 a.m. on December 30th, without any winter clothes and possibly even barefoot. He says the 43-year-old was struggling with an episode of psychosis again.
What I would describe as like a manic episode for quite a few days leading up to that. She had a previous history.
It was extremely cold. So that's concerning.
So this is the area that we had done
Missoula Police's Whitney Bennett explains officers responded immediately to the neighborhood, noting a popular bike path nearby leads downtown and continues along the banks of the city's Clark Fork River. Cameras from homes and businesses in the area turning up nothing.
The community has been amazing. Small town, when you hear mom has gone missing, it's huge.
A break the next day, a barefoot woman spotted at the Holiday Inn downtown, fitting Eva's description. She's given a bowl of warm soup before she wanders off.
It was well over 50 people. I think it was closer to 70 that night running around. So we covered a lot of ground. And it turned out the lead that we were chasing was a mistaken identity.
Neskis called Eva a friend for more than a dozen years, bringing them close, children the same age, and a shared love of farming.
My name is Eva Mason. I'm here today to talk about seed screens.
Eva's incredibly quiet, but not in a way that feels closed off. Like, she's super open, and you can see, she's really tender.
A mom herself, Katie, aches for Eva's husband and two children, just 10 and 5.
Before I even talked to Dave or anyone else, I made the assumption that it was mental health related, and then it turned out to be that way. I was just imagining myself in Dave's shoes and having my partner be missing, and there's nothing more terrifying.
From an hour outside of town to the Missoula airport, it's hard to move around the area without being reminded Eva is still missing. A community effort that's aiding police.
And even within the last month, we've received reports of sightings of her. And our detectives division is following up with everything we get.
Dave keeps Eva's home office untouched, fighting to stay positive that the sweet and gentle mother can shine again.
So the seed screens make it possible to clean 100 bed feet, and so it's easier to streamline the process.
We're still in the hopeful phase very much, and we want to find her. And if she needs space and doesn't need to be here for whatever reason, we want her to know that's okay. We want her to be, we care about her. The kids love her so much, and we just want to know she's safe.
Missoula police tell us that they were out at the Prather house the day before her disappearance, and they referred Eva to a mental health mobile support team. Her husband, Dave, is joining us now to talk more about his wife's disappearance. Dave, thank you for being with us. There have been a number of sightings. Has that led to any new information or clues as you look for your wife?
Yeah, unfortunately, no. The police have received quite a few tips or call-ins, but nothing's been able to be substantiated so we have still really no more idea than we did the day she left.
Take us back to that day and even the day prior when police were called out. What was your wife's state of mind, and what conversations did you have around how she was doing?
So, first several days leading up to this, she had been experiencing, she has high levels of anxiety, which kind of leads to manic episodes. And at its most extreme, she gets to, can be in a little bit of a state of psychosis where she'll imagine things happening, beyond reality. And, she'd been kind of in and out of some of those states, or the previous couple of days, we'd been talking about having her go in to see her therapist, see her psychiatrist, to get some help. But she was really reticent to do that. She had a not very positive experience a couple of years ago at an inpatient facility. And she was just really, frightened about having to do that. And she wasn't going to go willingly in there. It didn't seem at that point. And it seemed like she had been calming down. She got some better sleep the night or two before. So it really happened out of the blue. It felt, although we, certainly had no idea that was going to happen like it did.
Had she ever went missing before? Had she ever taken off for a few days or a few hours and you didn't know where she was? And did she mention anything about her plans this time?
No, never. I mean, we had talked about her going to stay, maybe with a family member or something, just to, have a break and not have to, worry about the day-to-day and taking care of the kids. And so we, when we first started looking, there was some, some logical options if she had gone back to Idaho to stay with one of her family members. But nothing ever happened that way. Her family was involved from the get-go on keeping an eye out. But no, never disappeared without telling anybody where she was at or anything like that.
And it's my understanding that cold morning in December, she walked out of the house with very little, right? There wasn't a suitcase, there wasn't heavy winter clothing or shoes or boots. The searches in your area, has that included the search of the river, which I know is nearby?
I mean, as far as we could tell, she didn't leave with anything substantial as far as her belongings or clothes. The police said the fire department ran some drones over the river pretty early on. We hired, there was a couple different search teams with dogs that came and searched in various areas. Another group ran some drones over the river, though that was a few weeks later. The river was pretty frozen over at that point. And so, so some searches. I'm not completely clear on where else the police have searched.
I know you're looking as well, Dave. Do you have any suspicion that there was foul play at all involved in your wife's disappearance as you piece together the clues here?
Yeah, I mean, nothing's led us to believe that at all. Talking to the detectives here, the rates of something like that happening are fairly minimal here. But yeah, we have, essentially no information to lead us to think that. And from what the detectives have shared with us, they don't believe that's the case either.
Well, I know you're having some tough conversations with your kids right now, a single dad at home trying to figure this out. We'll be in touch, Dave. Thank you for joining us and giving us some of your time. Joining me now is Katie Neske. She is a friend of Eva's and was also in our piece a moment ago. Katie, thank you for being here. When did you and Eva's friendship begin?
About 2011, I think, is when I first met Eva.
Okay, and you had mentioned that you weren't surprised that there was maybe a mental health element to her disappearance. What led you to believe that?
Just in the hearing what had happened, like walking out of the house in the middle of the night without the clothes and the shoes, is really essentially what came to mind. And also, I just know that in order to do that, there's likely something else going on.
Had she ever shared with you a desire to get away? Are there any things that in hindsight seem to make more sense now?
No, nothing about getting away. I would run into her in Missoula. I worked at a school, and she would come in sometimes and say, "Oh, we should get coffee." And I would say, "Yes, of course." And it never happened. And so that feels not very good now, but there was never anything about her wanting to leave.
You, along with Dave, are working to get the word out. I've seen the flyers all across Missoula. I went to school in Missoula, so I know it's a close-knit community. It's a beautiful place, and everybody's looking out for one another. Talk about the searches that you have been a part of and how you're looking out day to day for new updates.
It was phenomenal, the amount of people that came out. I remember the first night when we all gathered to do the search. I saw friends there who I didn't know Dave or Eva, and that felt really great and really hopeful. And after that, it was kind of the next day we did some solo things. Like I drove out Highway 200, other friends drove out 90 West or 90 East. And then we did the dog search around the neighborhood. And those were kind of the biggest gatherings that we had to go against.
Yeah, we know she wasn't prepared for the elements. The river is nearby. If you could say anything to your friend, if somehow she's out there listening and is struggling, what would you say to her?
Oh, God. I would say that we just want to know that you are okay and that we totally understand that things like this can happen and there shouldn't be any shame around any of that, and that we just want to know you're safe.
And my final question for you, Katie, is the shame, right? I mean, there are so many people that are struggling with mental illness. It's it's something that is relatable. It's very common. I think part of the reason you said you want to share Eva's story is to try to shed the stigma around this. Has that been successful as you continue to share your friend's plight?
I don't know what we'd be able to say successful. I certainly am talking about it a lot more, and just mental health in general. And people close to me and myself, we also struggle with mental health. And so I think it would be just really helpful for everyone to recognize that mental health is a part of physical health. There's no shame in it, and that we can talk about it just like we talk about a broken leg.
Right. And anybody who's struggling with it deserves the same attention and care if they're missing or not. Katie, thank you for giving us some of your time. And as I said to Dave, we'll be in touch. And I'm hoping that your friend is back with you all soon. Thank you.
Thanks.
If you have any information that can help bring Eva home to her friends and family safely, contact the Missoula Police Department. Their non-emergency number is 406-552-6300. And make sure you join us for our missing case next week, the search for Leona Kenzie. Leona was last seen in October 1999. She's a landscaper. She's a member of the Puyallup Indian tribe, and Leona walked out of her home in La Grande, Oregon, all of those years ago, and she has not been seen since. She worked as a drug dealer. She did use, and for years, police have focused heavily on her drug dealer, who is now reportedly living in Mexico.
A couple weeks before she went missing, somebody spray painted narc on the front of her home. I just want the truth. Was it a drug debt? Was she, a informant? What happened? How and why?
Police now tell us there is another person they are looking for in this case, so tune in next week for the latest on that investigation. Many of our missing cases that we cover come from you. If you have a missing persons case you think we should be looking into, send it to us at newsnationnow.com/missing. Thank you, as always, for joining us. I'm Marnie Hughes in Chicago. I'll see you here next week for another missing case.